your fault. Right here. I was taught and trained to eat everything on my plate, and it would be like, there would be like 2 pieces of chicken fried steak left with the gravy. Oh, give it to Morrison, he'll eat it, and attaboy. So, that was my perception. I would get encouragement when I would do those things. So that would kind of shaped me, and I just continued to clean up the plate. And it was like when I worked with my dad in the print shop and my mom would go get lunch, my dad was almost proud that I would eat 2 hamburgers for lunch every day. He was proud of me for that. And it shaped me. My dad shaped me in some good ways too, so don't get me wrong. But see, there are things in our lives that shape us. Is that a fun thing for you guys to do sometime when you're with family or around the dinner table or wherever? List the top 3 people who influenced your life. And then list the top 3 events that influenced your life. Just have that conversation with your family. And it's kind of a fun conversation to go around. If your kids will get to know you and you'll get to know your kids. See, for me, my mom taught me about God. And she taught me right away at an early age. I still remember her when I had to be younger than, I was probably 8 or 7 or 6. And I said a bad word, and my mom said, you just hurt God's feelings. And right there, I remember that. It's the first thing I remember about God. And my mom didn't have to teach me that there was a God, but she just told me I hurt his feelings. So I knew from my mom that God existed. My dad taught me about integrity and work ethic. My dad was a worker. And I remember on a football game on a Friday night, I got a cleat stuck in my mouth at this football game, upside down. The shoe went in my mouth, and the cleat was caught behind my tooth, my front teeth, and then the other cleats, it was kind of upside down. I'll show you. It was kind of like, it was in my, I'm not going to put it all the way in my mouth, but it was kind of in like this, and the cleat right here was up here, and these other cleats were just scraping on my nose, and it was just rubbing my face raw. And the referee stopped the game, and they knelt down and held me still and untied the guy's shoe and took his foot out of the shoe and had me stand up, and I had a shoe in my mouth. It was wonderful. And the next day, though, I had agreed to go to do some roof work for Bob Runyon. And, I'm probably 17 years old, and it's Saturday morning, had a rough night before, and I woke up, and my face hurt. And I said, well, I'm just not going to show up. I'll tell you what, with my dad, that did not fly. No, son, you made a commitment. I don't care if your face hurts. You made a commitment to this man, and you're going to go carry those tiles up on the roof. And the next thing I knew, I was in Oakdale. I was hauling tiles on the roof. My dad taught me. He shaped me. As far as ministry goes, there were several people that shaped me. Pastor Dan Alger from Denair and Art Moore, my pastor from Oakdale. Pastor John had a huge part in my life, and they all believed in me. And there's a lady, most of you might know Judy Ferrini. She used to pick me up for Sunday school when I was in 7th grade. Every other week, she would pick me up because the opposite weeks I would have to irrigate with my dad. So every other week, she would pick me up. And it was those years where she would do that. She'd pick me up and take me to church. And God began shaping me there. Well, I remember Buzz Hoffman in 8th grade. He was like a college guy. I was in 8th grade. He was in college, and he was a Christian, and he talked about the Bible. He carried a Bible around, and I saw, hey, it's okay. It's okay to be a Christian, and you don't have to hide that. And he taught me to be bold, and Daryl Nutcher and Ted Dean. These men would come and pray for me all the time. I remember kneeling at the altar at the Nazarene Church and looking down between my arms, and I would see Ted's feet on one side and Daryl's feet on the other side, and they would always pray for me. They shaped my life. So do that with your family. Just talk about what things shaped your life. This morning we're looking at Romans chapter 12, verse 3. But I've had some people say, well, Maury, you said we were going to go through the book of Romans. And I kind of misled you, not on purpose, but we are taking a verse from Romans and we are illustrating that verse with an Old Testament character. So I think when we first started this, some people thought we were going to do this expository study of chapter 12 in Romans like Pastor John does. And I apologize if I misled some of you, or if Jeremiah did. Jeremiah was just communicating to you what I had communicated to him. But we are looking at a character in the Old Testament that illustrates this verse. Well, this verse in Romans chapter 3 that Pastor Al read, I got to get right back to it here. Let's look at it real quick just to put it into context, because a lot of times when we take one verse, you really got to put that verse in context, okay? It says this: because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given you. Now, Paul has stuck that right at the beginning of this little section where he begins talking about gifts, spiritual gifts. And apparently, if you look at what he had experienced with the Corinthians, that's the reason that he's writing this. And if you turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 12 real quick, let's look at that. This will put that verse kind of into context. If you read verses 3 in Romans 3 through 8, you'll get the idea. He talks about gifts and that there are many parts to the body. But if you pop over to chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians, like verse 4 of chapter 12 says, there are different kinds of spiritual gifts, but the same Spirit is the source of them all. Then in verse 11, it is the one and only Spirit who distributes all these gifts. He alone decides which gift each person should have. It makes it sound a little bit like there might have been a little bit of jealousy over these gifts. Like, how come he has a better gift than I have? And there was probably some people who were kind of proud of their gift. Maybe one gift, they may have had a gift that was more of an upfront type of gift. In our day, we might look at, maybe you have a gift of music and being able to teach the word, and maybe someone else has a gift of service. You never see them back there making the coffee. You just know that every Sunday you get here, there's coffee made. They have the gift of hospitality. Well, maybe back in the day that Paul's talking about, people were kind of like, well, I'm pretty proud of my gift. I'm sorry you have to make coffee, but I really like my gift. That's kind of where Paul's talking. That's kind of the context that it's in. We go on in 1 Corinthians, one body, many parts, verse 31, so you should earnestly desire the most helpful gifts. So if you kind of read through this whole thing, you'll get the idea that there was a problem with these gifts, with the way people were seeing themselves. That's what Paul was talking about. Paul wants to get rid of the individualist thinking, and he wants us to think about the body of Christ. So that's the context of our verse. And now we're going to look at a character in the Old Testament that will illustrate to us what we need to do in order to comply with Romans 12:3. Go ahead to is there another verse after that? Next slide, please. So who are we really? That's what the question is. So who are we really? If there's this perceived view of us, I have a projected view, a view that I want. This is